So every few days I'd go in, I'd check, and I would look to see if my comment had fallen off the page. And if it had, I would just go back, find it, copy paste, just to keep it there. And within the week, he went from, like I said, at the beginning of the live stream, from 300 subscribers all the way up to above 1,000.
Wow.
Make it simple, like as stupidly simple as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you start to add in complexity, things go out the window.
You're listening to A Real Human Being, a podcast about conversation and connection and being human. My name is Josh Putnam, and I believe that everybody is worth listening to, that connection is powerful and healing, and that we need each other. Hello, everyone. Welcome into the show today. I am excited about my guest today, somebody that I've worked with now for a little while, and we've been able to talk occasionally, but now we're going to be able to get a little in depth, and I love what he is doing and what he has done, especially over this last year. And I think that you'll all find this very fascinating and helpful, I think, for those who are trying to especially transition as the economy has been a little tough lately. So this is Drew Hitchcock, and Drew, welcome into the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So it's my pleasure. So Drew, let's start with, let's just like have you introduce yourself, a little bit about yourself, a little bit of background, maybe, something interesting about you and.
Okay. So my name is Drew Hitchcock. Right now I classify myself as a YouTube expert per se. That is what I work with most of my clients on. I do have a handful of clients who I do more broad, like digital marketing type stuff, but I would say YouTube expert is probably how I would classify myself right now. I have been in kind of the online space for, it's been since 2013 at least. I've gone through a myriad of like online business ideas, both while working full time, as well as while having two jobs. We can get into that. I've been all over the place. I've done the YouTube game myself. I have done e-commerce, Amazon FBA. I have done SEO, website stuff. I have done.
You affiliate?
So I do a little bit affiliate with some of the, like, as a function of like some of the clients who I work with. They like, hey, what products and services do you recommend for XYZ? And so I've made money in a wide gambit of different arrangements. And up until this point, I'm now full-time helping people grow their YouTube channels. Specifically, I've kind of like made it my goal to help 10 of my heroes hit the 1 million subscriber mark is kind of like what I'm shooting for. So I'm sure we can get into a lot of the nitty-gritties of the whole journey as I've gone, but that is kind of me in a nutshell up until this point.
Where you're at now, that and we'll hit on this. I think that we'll get into this a little bit later, but something you said there kind of stands out to me as to something that is a key to, I think, your success, but that you wanted to help. What did you say? 10 of your heroes to reach?
10 of my heroes to reach 1 million subscribers or more.
So let's everyone hold on to that in your mind for a minute, because that's going to be, I think, a focal point of our discussion here. But let's go backwards a little bit and talk about where you started, or maybe not necessarily where you started, but kind of where you were professionally before 2020 and maybe even the couple of years prior to that.
Yeah, so kind of in the recent couple of years before I made this transition into helping people with their YouTube channel, I was working as a cost engineer for GE Aviation, and I was in a very unique role as a function of my group had been tasked with consulting with all of the other GE businesses. So I got to experience GE Healthcare. I got to experience GE Power. I got to experience Baker Hughes, which was a company that GE had formed a joint venture with, as well as renewable energy. Like I've seen the whole like GE suite of all of their products. I think the only one that I really didn't touch was transportation. But that role had me traveling 50% of the time, and I would say
Wow.
all of my like ventures outside of GE were kind of like on the down low. Like I was helping Garrett at the time,
Hmm.
and like he was really the only major client that I had.
Hmm.
Um, but up until about mid last year, I ultimately got laid off as a function of I had transitioned in my group as kind of being out and about doing the activity to training people on how to effectively take cost out of product,
Okay.
and we ended up training somewhere in the ballpark of it was like 1,000 engineers across GE Aviation, which was kind of
Wow.
insane,
Wow.
just in a year's period of time. And as things had started transitioning into 2020 with COVID, um, pretty much the entire organization got hit with a pretty significant layoff.
Mm.
I want to say the initial number was like 15%, and then as time went on, I think it grew to somewhere in the ballpark of like 25% of
Wow.
the total organization, which was pretty
Oof.
significant.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, that's like globally, so it's not only within the U.S. It's
Mm.
also includes like all of the other sites around the world that GE had or
Okay.
aviation had specifically.
Okay.
So at that point, when I got the news, I started thinking about like kind of like where I was at and how I was going to make the transition appropriately.
Hmm.
And I really started asking my question, like, what it, I had told myself that I was already going to be leaving GE at the end of the year. This just kind of like escalated the time frame. And
Hmm.
for me, it was how now that this is happening kind of at an exponential rate, how do I like if I wanted to bring on more clients, who would I want to bring on?
Hmm.
Who do I think that I could really add value to?
Hmm.
And I kind of went down the list of like all of the people that I had followed over the years and said, one, do they have a YouTube channel? And two, do I have some type of connection with them where it would make sense for me to reach out?
Right.
Um, so that then started. I made a handful of videos just as kind of like a thank you video to a handful of them, and it's just like,
Mm.
I appreciate everything that you've put into your community and the value that I've gotten from it. Here are some takeaways and things that I've done. Kind of like, hey, I've done the things that you said to do,
Yeah.
and here's where I got from it. Um, and for whatever reason, Ryan Moran was the first one that I actually reached out to,
Hmm.
and that led to a conversation of working on his channel, and that kind of then spurred the moment of like, oh, like if I really want to just work with the people that I've been following for a while, why not just like figure out a way to reach out and
Right.
just see what happens? Like
Right.
at the end of the day, I think a lot of times we have this preconceived notion that the people that we follow are almost untouchable,
Right.
where
Yeah.
like why would they care about what I have to offer?
Yeah.
But if you can find somewhere where you like what you're doing aligns with where they're going, I think you would be surprised with how well you can actually create that connection.
Yeah.
A great example. So worked with Ryan for a handful of months before he brought on a video editor who took over some of my responsibilities.
Okay.
Um, but I ultimately ended up reaching out to Benjamin Hardy and even Noah Kagan. I
Mm.
don't know if you're familiar with Noah at
I
all.
I don't know Noah.
Yeah, so Noah runs a company called AppSumo,
Okay.
based out of Texas. He's really good friends with both Chase Jarvis and Tim Ferriss,
Okay.
and that's kind of how I came across Noah and his content. Noah was on a Creative Live show with Tim, specifically talking about business. And like I said, he runs a company called AppSumo, which is like a great, if you're ever looking for like digital marketing type software,
Uh-huh.
they run like lifetime deals on like a lot of SaaS companies. Like for instance, one of the deals that I use to this day and have ever since I bought it was they basically had a service similar to Dropbox where you
Okay.
could pay $200 for 2 terabytes for life.
Oh, so it's not like a monthly subscription or anything.
Yeah.
That's nice.
So a one time payment, and I'm sitting here like, well, a 2 terabyte drive, if I go and buy it off the shelf, is going to be
Yeah.
$200 just for the drive. and
Yeah.
to have that storage out in the cloud for the cost of a hard drive, like sign me up. Like,
Yeah.
so that's what's really cool about what he does. But it's like I've been watching him grow his YouTube channel, and it just kind of gives me permission to say, hey, like if I see something that you're doing that I think that I might have an insight that might add value to, why not?
Yeah.
So I reached out to him. I actually he has every Friday he does like a live event where he'll get on live and talk to his fans on YouTube.
Hmm.
So I had sent him a DM with like a quick little video of something that I learned. I know he uses email marketing quite a bit, and
Hmm.
was like, hey, there's this cool little thing that you can put at the end of the URL for the videos that you're sending out with your email, that
Uh-huh.
if somebody is like just passively listening, it'll take them from one video to the next, and basically
In a playlist.
in a playlist without you having to go and create a custom playlist,
Right.
which is kind of cool.
Oh, so you don't actually have to create the playlist. It just,
Exactly. It's just
wow.
it basically just pulls all of your uploads
Oh, okay.
into one massive playlist. And it usually, like with most email, like people who utilize email marketing, they're just sending whatever the most recent video is. So
Yeah.
so it sends them the most recent video. They can watch it'll play through that, and then once it gets to the end of the video, it'll automatically go to the next recent video, and
Yeah.
it'll just kind of cycle through, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
uh but yeah, so I over the last year or so, I've actually kind of been in the process of documenting the connections that I've made and how I've approached the conversation,
Hmm.
and how that has turned into, whether it be business or just really good connections, where like these are people, like I said, that I in my head at the time would have thought, why would they care about what I'm
Right.
doing or who I am?
Yeah.
And it's actually turned into like a meaningful conversation
Right.
after the fact.
And
So
so, okay, so this is, yeah, let's kind of jump in here. You sort of did something similar to this with Garrett, right? So
yep.
Garrett, and you mentioned Garrett, and those, for those listening, Drew and I, Garrett Gunderson, he's a mutual client of ours, and that's where we work together. And Garrett is in the uh, finance space,
Mhm.
somebody who is, I think we both quite admire what he does, and are aligned with a lot of his philosophies or surrounding money. Um, but one thing he always talks about is, and I've heard this many. I edit his videos, so I listen to him all day, every day, and so and then Drew, of course, has to watches them and does the YouTube side of it. So we're familiar with his message. But one of the things that he has said repeatedly is like when you're going to um, when you maybe want to learn from somebody or work with somebody, you find a way to add value to their life in some way. You don't go and say, hey, can I pick your brain, right? This is something he has said a number of times. No one wants their brain picked. But if you can go in and you say, here's a way that I can add value to your life, here's a way that I can help you, like you're talking about here, grow your YouTube channel, or just improve your performance in some way, um, then they're much more inclined to listen. And I think that you did this with Garrett, didn't you? Because I don't know the whole story. I just kind of got little pieces of it. But how did you end up working with Garrett in the first place?
So this is going to be a little bit of an elongated story.
Okay.
I've only shared this probably with a handful of people, but basically what it boils down to is, so I was on a plane ride coming home from, actually I think I was coming back from Milwaukee, either Milwaukee or Greenville, South Carolina,
Mhm.
and I was on a plane ride home, and I distinctly remember the podcast I was listening to. It was Ryan's podcast,
Mm.
and he had basically taken the recording from the capitalism conference that Garrett had done and put it on the
Okay.
podcast.
Mhm.
So I was listening to this, and everything that he was talking about like super resonated. It's like, dude, this guy gets it.
Mhm.
Um, and obviously, at the end of all of his little speeches, he has like a phone number you can text. So I texted the number,
This is
went through.
Garrett's number.
Yeah. Yeah. So that got you access to opt in for his mega kit. And then obviously they offer, he's got like a newsletter called Build.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, screw it. Let's go ahead and pick that up as well.
Mm-hmm.
Went through that process and just was really fascinated in kind of anything and everything that Garrett was about,
Mm-hmm.
just because it's like it resonated in such a way where it was like, man, he has articulated that it's not just about money. Like living a good life is not just about money. It's about kind of like the whole gambit
Mm-hmm.
of how you create your experience.
Mm-hmm.
And there was just something about the way that he articulated it that was like, oh, this guy gets it.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously I was a part of that for I think the newsletter is like a full year long. And at this point in time, I was still doing the retail arbitrage and Amazon FBA at the time.
Okay.
And at the end of that year, I had sat down and kind of like reevaluated, like, I'm doing a lot of different things in the area of business, and I'm not 100% sure what direction I really want to go. So I kind of like did the like, here are the activities that I'm doing, here are the pros, here are the cons,
Mm-hmm.
what do I like, not like about each of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of landed on, okay, the FBA thing's not working out. I had done private labeling and had a failed product.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have it here. But I kind of said, this really, like, I'm not jiving with how this is going. Like, I can do
Mm-hmm.
this and make money with it, but I'm not finding much fulfillment in it.
Okay.
Then I had a couple of clients that I was doing some digital marketing type activities with, and I really loved the interactions that I had with them, and really thought that I felt like I was making a difference with them, because it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I can open this world of what it's like to use the internet for your business
Mm-hmm.
to them in a way that is going to really move the needle for them.
Right.
So I kind of landed on like, okay, I want to go down this consulting path, but so I first wrote down, like, who are five people that I know who have a business where they're doing something online, and who I am not 100% sure if they already have somebody to fit this mold of like needing
Right.
help in the digital, in
Yeah.
the online space. So now at this point in time, I had taken Garrett's cash flow banking course as well.
Okay.
And through that, I had met Derek. I don't know if you know Derek Van Ness.
I don't know.
Derek is actually, I didn't know this at the time, but Derek is Garrett's brother-in-law.
Oh,
And
okay.
I had ended up purchasing a cash flow banking policy through Derek.
Oh, okay.
And I found him through an online means. I had done business with him, and it's like,
Mm.
I wonder if there's a way that I could add value to Derek. So got on the phone with Derek, was like, hey, I think I really want to go down kind of the consulting rabbit hole. I know you're doing stuff online. I'd love to figure out a way how I can add value to you.
Mm-hmm.
No, like, I'm not going to charge you for this. This is just me testing the water, seeing
Right.
if we can make something work. So we kind of agreed to sit on we basically had a Monday touch point call where we would go through, like, here are the things you're working on right now, here are the activities that you're trying to do, and here are the systems and processes that I can help set up for you. So I ended up setting up some of his email marketing, as well as some of his he had purchased ClickFunnels and was going to be doing like his own opt-in form and that kind of thing. So I had helped him with kind of the setup of that.
Okay.
And it was about end of January when I had stumbled upon Garrett's YouTube channel, and I was really confused because when I showed up to his channel, like, he had, most of his videos were 2 to 3 minutes at that point in time.
Okay.
There was a title to the video, but there wasn't anything in the description. And when I looked at vidIQ, I didn't see any tags or anything like that. And I'm like scratching my head, like, this is a dude who's a New York Times bestseller, who's producing content on a consistent basis, and he's got 57 subscribers. Like, something's wrong with this.
Right. Yeah. There's so much
So
potential there, but it's not being realized.
yeah, and it was just one of those things where I was like, okay, I obviously found Derek through Garrett's program, so obviously
Yeah.
they have some type of connection. So I sent an email to Derek and I was like, hey, I see I see this channel. It looks like Garrett. It is definitely Garrett on the videos. Like, what's going on? And he was like, yep, that definitely is Garrett. I'm like, cool. I
Mhm.
have some thoughts for his social media in general.
Uh-huh.
I would love to just share what I know.
Yeah.
So that then turned into a quick email where he had forwarded it on to Garrett, and that basically set up my first phone call with who I thought was just going to be Garrett.
Uh-huh.
So I remember to this day, I was sitting in the parking lot on lunch, like getting ready for this call, and I get on the call, and Garrett picks up, and he's like, "Hey, what's up?" And I'm like, "Hey, here to talk about your stuff." And he's like, "Cool. Hold on one sec. I'm gonna forward this call into my marketing team." And I'm sitting here like, "Oh, that
Wasn't
that
prepared for this.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay." So yeah, so despite to say my connection at the time was abysmal because I like they basically like opened it up and they're like, "Okay, cool. What do you got?"
Go. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just like,
Impress us. Yeah.
so I had written down kind of like a list of like, here are the things that I would change right here, right now. And
Mhm.
here are some changes. So I started like rattling stuff off because I didn't know like where this was gonna go.
Yeah.
And like two, I got maybe two sentences in, and all of a sudden, one of the marketing guys was like, "We're having a hard time hearing you. Could you by chance just send us an email with some details?" And I'm like, I'm like, cool,
Right.
gotcha.
Yeah.
So after about a whopping 3 minutes of being on that phone call, it was very clear that I just needed to send an email, and away I went.
Yeah.
so so I took like 2 or 3 days putting together 3 or 4 slides just of like, here are the connections between all of his social media channels, and here are the things that I would change like right now.
Mhm.
um and then that turned into, I sent that email off. It took like a week to hear back from the marketing agency, and they're like, cool, we'd love to give you a test. And I'm like,
Mm.
okay, what does that mean? So I got on with the project manager and had a conversation with them, and he's like, yeah, obviously you're very familiar with a lot of this stuff. Where do you think you can add the most? So
Mhm.
obviously I had run my own YouTube channel at this point in time, and was like, hey, I really think me managing the channel and kind of helping with that would probably see you'd probably get the most, bang for your buck from a time standpoint.
Yeah.
So for about so in the first month he had gone from 57 subscribers to a little bit over 100.
Uh-huh.
So we had doubled him in a month from me coming on, and I'm like, okay, cool, we're seeing some traction, things are
Mhm.
moving in the right direction. The second month we doubled him again. He was at around, I think it was like 212. I have it
Mhm.
somewhere in one of my notes. But he was at around 212 subscribers after the second month. And then uh, in the third month, about mid-month, he had an event with Patrick Jim Tempo, who
Okay.
is
Right.
one of the guys that he used to co-host
Yeah.
one of the
It was the
um,
life. What was it called?
Atlas Shrugged.
Well, that's the Ayn Rand book, right? So, uh,
Oh yeah, Sacrifice Shrugged.
Sacrifice Shrugged.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he had put together a kind of like a docu series in the finance world, and Garrett was a part of it.
Mhm.
And I had opted in. I don't remember where I opted in from. I'm a part of like enough like internet marketing, make money online type things that I got at least 5 or 6 emails from different people. Hey,
Yeah.
there's this money revealed thing. So
Oh,
I
they
had
were all promoting the same thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
When you're in the digital marketing space, it is so common
Mhm.
for like one big promotion to happen, and you get like 5 to 7 email. Like, I'm on enough
Right.
lists that it's like there's gonna be overlap.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
So anyways, so I jumped on, and there was basically at the beginning of this docuseries, basically you could watch every episode live as they released it, and then to kick it off, they had a session where Garrett and Patrick Dintempo just kind of went and just had a chat about all of money, finance, whatevs, kind of Garrett's usual spiel.
Yeah.
And I was sitting on the live event, and the way they had it set up is they had basically like a landing page with an embedded YouTube video, which was which was the live stream, and then they had Facebook comments below that video.
Okay.
So obviously, I'm a YouTube guy.
Whenever I see them from Facebook, or
so Facebook has like an embed feature where you can take like a piece of code and plug it into your landing page, and then you have just like a normal Facebook comment page.
Okay, so it's just like a private comment page.
Yeah, exactly.
Facebook's structure or build.
Exactly. Okay. So anyway, so I was sitting on this live event, and I had opened up the YouTube window, and I'm like sitting here on the live stream. I've got the Facebook on one page, I've got the YouTube on another, and I see there's 1,400 people sitting in this lobby. All of who, and as you go through the comments, like everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, Garrett's so amazing! Knowledge bombs everywhere, yada yada." You just sit there and you're like, "Dude, this is like Garrett's target audience watching him," and like, so at the time, I was just like, "I wonder what would happen if I copied Garrett's YouTube channel and put a comment and said, 'Hey, I found Garrett's YouTube channel. Everybody should go check it out and subscribe.'" And funny enough, so I left it in the YouTube comments as well as on the landing page, and all of a sudden Patrick decided to like stop Garrett from talking, and he's like, "Yeah, I just want to do a couple shout outs to people who are in the comment sections." And sure enough, he read my comment, and I'm like,
wow,
oh boy. So I like created a new tab, opened up Garrett's analytics. I'm like, I wonder.
Yeah.
And I let it go for about 10-15 minutes, and then hit the refresh button. And at the time, like at the start of the live stream, he was at like 300 subscribers, and I hit the refresh button. It's like, oh, he's at 450 now. It's like, nice.
Yeah.
And so I'm just sitting here like, dude, I've like hit the jackpot. Like get him. I'm like, we should. I put in another comment. I'm like, we should get him to 1,000. And I just kind of like let it go. And what I would do is like every couple days he left that live up for about a week. He also sent out emails to the live, like for the replay.
Okay. Right.
So every few days I'd go in, I'd check, and I would look to see if my comment had fallen off the page. And if it had, I would just go back, find it, copy paste, just to keep it there. And within the week, he went from, like I said, at the beginning of the live stream, from 300 subscribers all the way up to above 1,000.
Wow.
And it was like, yeah, this is that we're moving.
The way. Yeah, that's the story that I had heard, or at least little pieces of. So, but I'd never heard it from you. So I was curious.
Yeah. So it was just kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, like guerrilla tactics at its prime.
Yeah. It's just a great opportunity. You were there. You seized the moment and just went.
Yeah, and that's kind of why, like, when I, the goal that I set, I find that, especially in the client world, like if you're bringing on just any old client, you're going to have a very different experience with that person than if you actually know, care, and like want that person to win.
Yeah.
There's just like a much different mentality. Like, did I care? Like, did I like time out how much time I was sitting on that live stream and doing that? Like, no, like I'm not going to bill the client for that. It's like, I want them to win.
Right.
And just having that mentality, I feel like has been one of my biggest advantages, because it's like when you have that connection and understanding of like who that person is, what they're all about, and what their mission is,
and you're on board with it.
Yeah, it makes it that much easier to put in the extra effort and really just go for it.
Right.
So at that point in time, now, mind you, up until this point, I was essentially like a subcontractor under the people who were managing his channels at that point in time. And I now part of the story that I kind of left out was I had flown as a function of my working with Derek. I had taken it on myself to fly out to Salt Lake City to help Derek record some videos for his YouTube channel and kind of his business. And as a function of that, I had met Weston, because Weston was the one, him and Convy were the ones who did the recordings. So I obviously I had Weston's number at that point in time, and I sent him a text. I'm like, "Hey, did you see Garrett's channel?" And he's like, "No, yeah, I think it's really cool." And I'm like, "You realize that was me, right?" ... And he's like, "Wait, what do you mean?" And I sent him the replay at the timestamp, and he's like, "Oh, that was you." So so after the week had passed, and that Monday morning, I was getting home from work, and I get this random text like, "How much do you charge for this?" I'm like, what do you mean?" And he's like, "Oh, by the way, this is Garrett." I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting."
Right. A number you don't know. How much do you charge? What do you...
Well, yeah. Well, at that point in time, like the client stuff was all like pro bono and very like low key. It really wasn't anything, substantial at all. Right. And at that point in time, it's like when you're working a 6-figure job and just doing stuff on the side, it's kind of like extra money is just extra money that you can play and invest and do that kind of thing with. So I had to really kind of get my ducks in a row and figure out, okay, like what are typical norms for what people offer in this space and that kind of thing. And we had come to an agreement on like the finance piece, and it was like, oh wow, like this is a big deal. Like I just landed somebody who I look up to as a client. Like what?
Yeah.
And like for me, that was kind of like the tip of the iceberg of like, wow, it really just boils down to finding ways to add as much value as possible, and then everything else will like take care of itself.
Right. So let's back up for 1 second and just how did you gain the knowledge and the know-how to even have the skill set to add any value to somebody like Garrett? I mean, obviously you did your own YouTube channel. Is that really where it all came from? Was just your experience there?
Well, so I've spent more money on courses than I would like to admit. And like, I've just become very familiar. Like at the time, I had a client who we have kind of like a rev share agreement of, I help them with kind of anything and everything digital marketing, whether that be website stuff, whether that be, setting up sales funnels or social media and that kind of thing. So I already had a little bit of experience in that arena. But a lot of the YouTube stuff came from the time back 2013, 2014, when I was running my YouTube channel, my gaming channel, talking about StarCraft 2. It's like you start to see and understand like how the game is played. And surprisingly, like, I mean, it was 2018 at the time when I first got connected with Garrett. So even in those 4 or 5 years, like YouTube as a platform has evolved over time, but a lot of it has stayed pretty consistent as far as like the things that you think about, how do you look at search? How do you look at, obviously the suggested piece of YouTube is a little bit different than it was back then. Actually, now that I think about it, I'm not even sure I remember what the YouTube homepage at that time was like. I'd have to go to the Wayback Machine to figure that out.
Yeah. When did YouTube come out? What was it? Early 2000s, 2009? I mean,
yeah, I want to say it really like got kicked off like 2007, 2008 time frame. But it didn't turn into the platform where you could ultimately like create, get paid and that kind of stuff until, I think it wasn't until like 2008, 2009 when they first released the YouTube partnership program and all that stuff. Granted, back then, like being a partner meant you had 100 subscribers, and that was it. That was the only requirement.
Yeah.
So
My goodness, times have changed, but I mean, it took on a life of its own, but it's still the kind of fundamentally the same. So you
yeah,
can still apply all of those same, or a lot of the same principles and that you learned
yeah,
back then. Okay. Yeah, because I think that is with it, like that is you kind of hit the nail on the head as far as like um, uh, how do you find success in any area of life, but particularly in business, I think um, is finding ways to add value to somebody. So first you have to have that value to add, right? So
mhm,
you and Garrett talks about investing in yourself a
yep,
lot. And so you did that, whether it was intentional at the time when you were starting a YouTube channel, you weren't really thinking someday I'm gonna need to know all of this stuff so that I can help clients do the same thing. I mean, I don't know, maybe you were, but you probably were just doing it because you loved StarCraft and you were fascinated by the YouTube world and thought that would be a lot of fun. Um,
yeah. I mean, really, like that whole phase of my life really boiled down to like so. I I went to University of Cincinnati for my undergrad,
mhm,
and at the end of that time, I was starting to get really into like the whole esports scene and that
mm,
kind of thing. And there were a couple of casters who I really looked up to that I was like, dude, if I could do that, that would be amazing.
mhm,
And that was kind of when I decided, like, okay, I'm just going to start this YouTube channel and see if it turns into anything. And it was funny
mhm,
because, like, the first few videos that I released, I was like, why aren't the, why isn't anybody like watching these things? Like,
yeah,
what's the deal here? So finally, I sent one of the videos to a good friend of mine who was also interested in StarCraft, and I was like, okay, be honest, what is wrong with this? And he's like, you have zero personality. I'm like, what do you mean I have zero personality? Like, listen to yourself. I'm like,
yeah,
what do you mean? Like, he's
yeah,
like, go watch 10 videos from a caster that you admire and tell me what is different between your video and his video.
uh-huh,
And then it clicked. It was like, oh, like this dude's got really dynamic voice. Like he
uh-huh,
hits the highs, hits the lows, he like gets into it, and it's like, okay, I
uh-huh,
can do this. So so the first thing that I did was I switched up my intro from the hey, this is Drew. I'm playing some StarCraft 2 as Protoss
uh-huh,
to something that was a little bit more like, hey, hello everybody, this is Chaos with Chaos Esports Productions. And it's like
uh-huh.
you can
The
just
production
see the
value.
different, yeah, it's like, how do I make this interesting? How do I
Yeah.
really like take this to a next level? And it was funny too because like after I like figured that out and it hit me. I mean, it probably took me like 30 or 40 videos before I like came to this realization, and it was like, oh, okay, so this is kind of how I need to like go with this. After that, getting to the 100 subscriber mark was actually a pretty straightforward process.
Mm,
I hit 100 subscribers in probably 4 or 5 months,
okay.
and it was like all of a sudden once I hit 100, things just started, like I could see the flywheel just kind of moving along, and it's like,
Gain
oh,
momentum.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
you and at that point in time, I had like a couple of people had reached out on the channel like, "Hey, we'd love you to come and like cast our tournaments on the weekend," and that kind of thing. So
Okay.
so that then turned into the, getting into Twitch and live
Uh-huh.
broadcasting and that kind of thing. And
Yeah, Twitch terrifies me. It just with because there's just like there's so much going on live and at the same time. My brain has a hard time keeping up with it all. But
yeah,
it is very interesting to me though, the
yeah, Twitch is its own beast of a social media platform,
yeah.
but it's just been it was fascinating to like go through that evolution and come to the realization like, oh, like people really enjoy this. And
Yeah.
when you put the effort and time in, like you kind of start to see like your own growth. Like I go
Mm.
back and watch that first video every once in a while. I'm like, man, it's so bad.
Yeah,
But it just shows you how far you've come.
right.
And that whole era. So I stopped recording those videos probably, it's probably about like 24 end of 2014, beginning of 2015 timeframe. I had just cast. So as you know, doing the live streams and all of that, I was asked by an organization based out of Maine to cast a 16-man tournament. We had the top 8 Koreans, top 4 US, and top 4 EU players.
Okay.
In a $10,000 tournament. And basically I got a phone call one day like, hey, we're going to have this tournament. It's going to be 4 days long. We're going to pay you $500. Are you interested? And I'm like, dude, I'm going to get paid. Now the caveat was is it had to be shot on Korean prime time.
Okay, which was what time here? Or
which in Eastern it's 8 a.m. Okay. So it's like I am totally taking vacation days to do this. There's no
had a job at the time.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was just one of those things where you just like you put in the work, you see how things turn out, and then all of these really like at the time to get paid $500 to cast a video game tournament,
how ridiculous, right?
Yeah, but how ridiculous is that?
Yeah.
Like, you know, when I told my boss why I was taking a couple days off, he looked at me. He's like, "Okay, that's different. Have fun."
Yeah. So what year was this?
Like I said, this was probably about mid 2014.
Oh, okay.
It was kind of like the height of the StarCraft 2 era. I would say StarCraft is nothing of what it used to be. As far as viewership, MLG was like one of the big tournament. MLG and GSL were kind of the 2 big tournaments, and those would always have like 100,000 plus viewership for like the tournaments. Yeah. And after that year, you could see things like slowly disintegrate. The next year it was only like 30,000. The year after that was like 10. So it's turned back into kind of like a more niche community. Now you got things like League of Legends and CSGO and those type of things that are still big and rocking. But StarCraft has kind of like fall into the wayside a little bit.
Interesting. Yeah. Man, I think that is what, so like back then, and especially back when YouTube first started, it almost felt like a pipe dream and irresponsible to say, I'm going to be a YouTuber, right? And that's totally how I'm going to make my, or even anything in the online space. Whereas now it's not only not a pipe dream, but it's like,
that's what people want.
Right. And it's proven that it's viable. It's repeatable, right? I mean, it's replicatable. People do it over and over again. I mean, it doesn't mean that like everyone's going to become Mr. Beast, but it means like there are so many niches and there are so many available options for people and different ways to be involved. Whereas like you're on the back end, I'm on the back end right now. Of course, now I'm doing this podcast, but like there are so many different ways to kind of utilize the potential, the energy potential of the internet to add value to the world and to people's life. The market is so huge, right? I mean, so you can, like you said, there was StarCraft, 100,000 people for an event. I mean, that's crazy, but it was, I mean, nowadays, like that's nothing for some of these big, esports or gaming communities. Like that's no big deal, really.
I'm pretty sure the statistic for the last World's Championship tournament, like the final game, was greater than the Super Bowl.
Really?
Which like when you think about it, it's like, wow. Like the Super Bowl is like internationally known, like people everywhere watch it. And to think that a video game has gotten to the level where they have that many eyeballs all at the same time, is just absolutely remarkable. And quite honestly, it's, it's fun. It's funny because, I mean, I would say we haven't even hit the peak of like where that era is, and it's only going to get bigger from here. I mean, it started, if I remember right, it's starting to become more like it's a part of like the Olympics now.
Is it like esports or something?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there are a handful of games that are a part of the Olympics now.
Huh.
I'd have to look it up, um,
Yeah. But
but
it's
yeah, I
like
mean, it's crazy.
it is crazy, but it makes sense if you start, especially now as we've as kind of the whole world has moved even more toward online stuff now
Yep.
over the last year. It's just grown that market, I think, even bigger. Um, so let's get into like some specifics then, and about let's start with just like some basic advice. Don't give away your secret sauce or anything, but like for people who are starting a YouTube channel, or people who are wanting to do online content creation of some kind, and don't necessarily know where to start, or where to go, or it's overwhelming to them, and but they feel like there's so much potential there. What do I do? What advice would you give them just to start with?
So I think kind of one of the big things is just getting over that initial hurdle of like
Mm,
actually getting started. I think
mm,
quite honestly, a lot of times. So I've got a buddy of mine who I talk with. Actually, I've got a call with him later today. Um, One of his struggles is he plans everything
mm,
to a T,
mhm.
and it's like he's made videos before. He's relatively comfortable in front of the camera, but he feels like everything needs to be 100% perfect. And
Right.
it's the more I see it, it's the more I recognize how like just taking the time to like make it simple, like as stupidly simple as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you start to add in complexity, things go out the window. So best
Yeah.
best example. So my wife, she runs a blog called Hitchcock at Home,
Mm,
and it's a food cooking blog. And she beginning of last year, she started to make some YouTube videos for it.
okay.
And she's actually had one video which is like a bacon jerky video. For whatever reason, has
Huh.
she's got like over 10,000 views on that one video. And it's like, as a person who's got a channel with less than 100 subscribers, it's like 10,000 views on a
Yeah.
video is pretty
Ooh.
good.
Yeah.
um but she hit a point at the end of last year where she just felt like she didn't want to record anything, because she knew in her head all of the editing that she had to do.
Right.
And that was a big sticking point for her. Like, how do I like still do something that's good, but this editing piece, like she could record a video in an hour, but to then go through the process of editing was like a week or two
Yeah.
of her just taking the time to sit down and go through it. And so what as a function of kind of like what I've been doing, I ended up hiring an editor part time, because I've got a couple of clients that I do their editing and I'm starting to offload. And I was just like, hey, let's for the first couple videos, let's go ahead and just have them take a look at your videos and see what
Mm,
they can do. And I use a service that's like pretty cheap. They've got editors both in the Philippines as well as in India, so they can keep the
okay.
prices a little bit more reasonable.
Mhm.
But I mean, we uploaded the footage, and then 48 hours later, got kind of the first edit back. Now, our first go around was horrible,
Really?
only because I failed to include all the footage.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they'll need
so
that, right?
so after finally getting them all of the footage, the first one came back and she's like, oh, this is actually really good. Like,
Mhm.
this is way better than I could have done. And it's like, as a function of removing that barrier and making it simple for her,
Uh-huh.
we've now gone through 4 videos.
Okay.
So it was recognizing that by that process not being simple enough, it created a sticking point that stopped the front end stuff from even happening.
From even starting, yeah.
So as I've been able to build up my client base and start to like pass off some of these activities, I'm coming to my own conclusion that just making it as simple as possible is like, at the end of the day, what is stopping most people from actually taking the action that they need to take.
Mm,
um
okay.
because like 3 months ago, I had created a YouTube. I was in the process of creating a YouTube course. I said I was going to
Mm,
do it. I had told my accountability guys, like, "Hey, this is going to happen,"
mhm.
and I told them it was going to happen that month, at the beginning of the month, and that I would send them a link at the end of the month with, here's the first rough draft of the course.
Uh-huh.
And I got 2/3 of the way through the month, and I'm like, why haven't I done this? I said I was going to do it. I've got time on my calendar to do it, but I would always find a way to like not do it.
Avoid it.
And what I found out was the reason why I didn't do it was because in my head, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to take my DSLR into the other room where I've got like a nice little setup. I can have a window to get, nice lighting, that kind of thing. I hit the record button. I had my notes of everything that I was going to say. And I started going through it and went through like 2 or 3 takes. And I came to the realization, I'm like, dude, what am I doing? This needs to be simpler.
Okay. Yeah.
Because the process of recording on a DSLR, having to then take the footage, put it into the computer, getting it into the editor, and going through that whole spiel to like get it right. I was like, you know what? I'm going to use my webcam. I'm going to use OBS and I'm going to record, and I've got my notes here, and I'm just going to do it this way where I can hit the record button. Even if I screw up, it's not going to be the end of the world.
So you save yourself the editing time of having to go back in. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was it. I was able to, it took me 2 days
to
get through the entire course. And had I known that at the beginning of the month, I would have had the rest of the month to polish and do all the stuff. But because in my head, I had created this complexity of like going into the other room, feeling like I had to get everything right. It's like, once I took that out, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And I think I'm starting to realize more and more how it's like, once you introduce levels of complexity, it becomes less like the action is more difficult.
Yeah, less feasible for you, less accessible. I've found that to be true for me as well. Like this room that I'm in now has gone through multiple iterations of like, oh, I've got to get everything has to be right, and the lighting and the background, and I had a couch at one point and that was too big, and that was just and I would find all of these little things like as being reasons to I can't do it yet, right? I've got it, and then yeah, I've got to put the camera on, and I've got to then get the footage, and at one point I had a multiple camera set up. And I can do it. I mean, I have the technical skill to do it, but knowing what it's going to take afterward and going in and I'm already exhausted from the setup and the actual production. And then I have to go in and do post, and it would stop me from actually doing it. And so, and then so for this new podcast, that's something I had wanted to do, was to have, I could get on and just lecture people about something or my thoughts, but I love the energy of a conversation, and you have, and you can talk about so many interesting things. And so especially this last year, when people started going to Zoom more and other online platforms, I was like, this is totally acceptable. Yeah. A webcam might not have the same, I mean, I'm still using my mirrorless camera here, but like Zoom video quality isn't quite as good, and you get, can't adjust the frame rate and all that, but like it's good enough. And it's certainly right now, like everyone's doing Zoom calls, and I've seen interviews and videos of with people where like the webcam is terrible and even the audio isn't always great, but people are listening, people are watching because it's acceptable now, and it's fine anyway. So I kind of got over that hurdle, and I decided, I'll just do Zoom calls, and I can set it up so that I don't have to cut back and forth between the two people. So it saves me on all this editing time, and I go through and watch it at double speed just to cut out any really offensive stuff that's bothering me or whatever, but for the most part, like it is just cut out so much of the time and afterward, and definitely simplified. So and I've been able to do this is now my 6th episode, and I've tried podcasting before, and this has been the most consistent I've been able to be at it. And so I think not even realizing that was what I was doing, I was definitely simplifying, and it has definitely helped me a lot.
Yeah.
So you just got to kind of find some way for you to be, because if you were to go back to yourself in 2013 and say, I can't do a video until it looks like what they ended up looking like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you just never would have started.
Yep.
And you never would have had the experience and never would have gone for it. I had a conversation with Weston actually on Tuesday, and a quote that I mentioned to him there was from Marie Forleo, where she says the key to success is to start before you're ready, right? So you find some way to, like, okay, it's not perfect yet, and it's not really where I want to be in the end, but I can simplify it enough, and I can start, and then we can figure it out as we go.
Yeah. I think creating that simplify, like, yes, can things get complex over time? Sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the biggest barrier to entry that most people has is like they see all of the, what they're trying to replicate
Mm-hmm.
on the
Yeah.
internet. And as a function of that, they're like, well, if I can't have this level of quality, then it's just not worth it. And it's
Right.
like that is such a defeating mindset, because it basically you're giving yourself an out.
Yeah.
Like the thing that you're like, what you're really doing is you really fear like what other people think,
Yes.
rather than like
All of
what
the
it is yeah, it's like,
difficulty of it and whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think honestly, I for whatever reason, the gene of caring too much about what other people think has like I've got a lesser version of that. Like, do I care what people think? Yes, but
Yeah.
not nearly to the extent of some other people. And as a function of that, it's like I'm willing to just go all in and say, I'm not afraid to put myself out there and fail,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, the lessons that you learn from failures are truly like, I mean, had I not gone through the exercise of, you know, going through my YouTube channel, getting to a point where it's like, okay, this doesn't make any sense, going through
Mm.
FBA and having some level of success to then do private labeling and then have my private label just blow up in my face. Like, had I not gone through that evolution, I never would have gotten to the end conclusion of like, oh, I really like consulting, I really like interacting
Uh-huh.
with people. And had I not gone through that trial and tribulation, who knows where I would be.
Right. And continued on, like, persevered. I mean,
Mhm.
course corrected and learned
Yep.
the lessons, and then adjusted, but kept going. That's interesting. That's similar to the conversation Weston and I had. He talked about how failure, or not, he said mistakes, um, are necessary, not just that they might happen or that they're okay, but they need to happen, so that you can learn the lessons. And so he tries to set up situations where he and his team can fail early and often,
Mhm.
but just mitigate the cost of that, right? So, like, for him, in when they're doing a production, they do, shot blocking
Yep.
very intensively. So, like, they set up everything exactly the way it will be on set, like down to the dimensions and the measurements and the cameras and everything, so that they can go through and they shoot it as though they would on set. So that then they can go back and look at it. Well, this didn't work, or this lens didn't work, or this scene, or this dialogue, or whatever. And they make all of these mistakes that, sure, they still cost them money because they have their time. But if they were to go on set with all of that and make those mistakes, then you make it's a much costlier mistake.
Mhm.
And so they make all those mistakes early and learn from it. That is something, because I did a film, a feature a few years ago. I mean, so 2012 we released, so this is almost 10 years ago. And it was a devastating experience for me because it was just traumatic, and it was my first foray into the filmmaking world, and it did not do well, and we had a lot of issues on the business side in the end, and it was just a traumatic experience for me. And that I let that um, keep me from trying or persevering and continuing on. Although I did though learn lessons like I don't actually like a lot of this stuff. We didn't have any money, so I had to do a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
And so I learned a lot of things that I didn't like and I didn't really want to do. But I learned a skill like editing, which is what I do now. And that I didn't mind that, and I was decent at it. And so I could utilize that moving forward. But I did let it kind of like pull me out of that world for a number of years and like not even consider re-entering for a while. And so I think gaining that skill, and for whatever reason you kind of had the ability to just like who cares what other people think about me in this moment, and I'm just going to learn the lesson from it and move on. I think that's a very valuable skill to possess. Seems to have served you very well.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of experiences that we have as we grow up, but I think quite honestly, really what it boils down to is like the successes and failures that we have over time really just help us understand who we really are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, I have always. It's funny. I got an award in college my senior year, not for being the most outspoken leader or somebody who is bombastic and wants to be in front of everybody and this, that, and whatever. I got it as a function of because I was willing to just buckle down, do the work. I was the unspoken leader, the
Mm-hmm.
the person in the background, making sure that everything happened and you know was executed appropriately,
Mm-hmm.
rather than somebody who is at the forefront. Like I did try out for drum major and did not get it, unfortunately, but um it was the willingness to kind of like be there for people when they needed me to be there, regardless of like my own circumstance. I've always
Uh,
been like as I call a flex guy.
uh-huh.
Like when I was even when I was at GE, a lot of times I would take I would do an activity that I knew that nobody else would want to figure out or nobody else would want to do,
Right.
just because like if this is the person you need me to be right now, let me do it. Let me just do it.
Right.
Um, and for whatever reason, just having that flexibility and that openness to be willing to learn and try stuff that you haven't necessarily tried before, um, has always served me in a way where it's like even when so let me finish the thought. It's always served me in a way where I have grown and learned from the experience, regardless of what the outcome was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and kind of like why I have chosen to do a lot of the things that I've done has been a function of it's like, I know that even if this doesn't work out, that the experience that I will have gained from this is going to be way more valuable than the time and money that I invested into it.
Okay.
Um,
Right.
because like, so back back when I was doing the casting and the YouTube stuff, um, I had a very interesting 6 month period of time where I was in school full time, still employed by GE,
Mm-hmm.
working part time at an Apple store as a tech,
Mm.
helping people fix their computers, running a YouTube channel, as well as doing Amazon FBA,
Wow.
all at the same time.
Wow. Did you
And
get burned out? I mean,
well, so it's funny because I hit during this period of time, the way things were structured, like my master's program took 2 days a week. Monday, Wednesday,
okay.
Friday, I did not have any classes. My schedule was structured so that Tuesday and Thursday were just like crazy busy, where I would be at school from like 9:30 until 5. And then I had Monday, Wednesday, Friday to like figure stuff out and do homework and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And when my schedule had turned out that way, I was like, man, I am one, when you give me large pieces of time that I don't have allocated to something, I'm gonna waste it.
Mm.
So I said, well, what could I do that's Monday, Wednesday, Friday that I could find value in,
Mm-hmm.
where that during my day? And the answer was, well, one, I've always wanted to work in an Apple store just because it's Apple. It's an interesting like arena.
Mhm.
I love computers, and I know that learning how to talk to people in a way is going to give me a people skill that I just don't get at my current role at
Mhm.
GE. So I went for it, and sure enough, like the interview process happened as I was transitioning, because the way that the program that I was in, which is called the Edison program, at the time was structured that you would basically be off for an entire semester. Basically, they
Okay.
take you out of your role. They say go full time for a full semester, finish your masters, and then you come back. You're in a role, and you're finishing your master's part time. So you've
Okay.
got still a little bit of schoolwork. And I basically told myself, I'm like, okay, the Apple thing is, I'm only going to continue doing the Apple thing if I really enjoy it
Mhm.
and I don't feel like I'm going to get burnt out from it.
Okay.
So after I'd done the full-time semester and had come back to work and was basically working evenings at Apple, because obviously I went from shifting from being kind of more during the day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, plus one day on the weekend, to just evenings alone, which basically had me working 4 evenings a week plus a Saturday or a Sunday, depending on how the week worked.
Mhm.
Um, I came to the realization that the work that I was doing at Apple, for whatever reason, when I would show up and just do the work, I didn't get tired from it.
Hmm.
It was
Interesting.
it was very strange, because like
And
I assume,
you were a tech guy, or what were you doing there?
yeah. So when they first have you join, you're primarily working on mobile devices. So you're
Mm.
I don't remember what the official title was, but I was like working toward being a genius, somebody who worked on Macs.
Mhm.
I had gone through the Mac training. They just didn't have any like genius, part-time genius spots open. So
Okay.
even though I was in a lesser role, I basically act as a genius. Um, and there was just something about like having that experience of like showing up, fixing people's problems, getting them from a place where like, oh my gosh, my life is destroyed as a function of not being able to use this device and it
Yeah.
working for me, to, oh, it's okay, everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And
Huh.
I had a few interactions at that job that like just demonstrated to me more and more how I really love the way that Apple chooses to approach things. I had one gal bring in her Mac day after her birthday, and she's like, "So I got this Mac for my birthday.
Mhm.
Um, it's the top of the line, fully specced out, has Apple Care." And I had opened it up, set it up, and it was on the table, and my cat knocked over a vase
Oh man.
that was on the table, and water spilt all into the device. And I looked at her. She's like, I know I'm going to have to pay this amount because this is what it falls under. I've already called. I've had this conversation.
Yeah.
And I looked at her, and it's funny because at Apple, they're very like, they really want to empower you to like make the right call. And
Mm.
it's like, I'm sitting here thinking like, man, if I was in her shoes, I would be devastated. Like I'm going to school next year. I just got this awesome computer and it's been destroyed.
Yeah.
So I looked at her. I was like, hold on one second. I walked to the middle of the store where the manager was standing. I was like, okay, here's the situation. Here's what I want to do. I want to, since it was literally bought the previous week, I want
Uh-huh.
to return this. I want to replace it with the exact same thing, because this is the right thing to do.
Uh-huh.
Like, does Apple give that level of treatment to everybody? No. But given the situation and where things were at, I
Uh-huh.
felt like she was totally willing to pay,
Right.
and had that expectation. And I'm just like, look, if it were me, this is like, if this happened to me, I would be a promoter for life,
Right.
no matter what.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm like, let's give her this experience. And the
Yeah.
manager looked at me and she's like, yeah, you're probably right.
Wow. So they
And
gave you they had the flexibility to be able to do that. See, that is
yeah,
cool, because
and
you're right. I mean, she's now like an Apple
yeah,
lifelong customer.
Yeah, well, and it's funny too because so the way that they do their like rating system, like there's like so occasionally a survey will get sent out to the person, and
Hmm.
it just so happened that she had filled it out, and super long, like raving, like you could
Hmm.
just tell like she was ecstatic of
Yeah.
what I did done for her.
Yeah. Very cool.
And just to have that experience and be like, yes, I
Hmm.
created that. Like
Yeah.
there's just a level of fulfillment that I haven't ever been able to experience anywhere else besides in that store.
Yeah.
And it was just such a cool experience, and honestly why I stayed there for almost 2.5 years.
That's really interesting. I mean, but like it speaks to the kind of the theme of this conversation and what that seems to be this theme of your life, and what has, I think, been the thing that has allowed you to succeed is you're putting you're looking to add value to other people's lives. You're looking um, to benefit others in some way, expecting nothing in return. But because you do that, all of these doors open up and all of these opportunities open up, and you're able to have you do get in return,
Yeah.
but you don't have to um, you know inconvenience anybody else for it, or anything like that. So that's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, let's I think that's it's been about an hour, over an hour, but what a great conversation. This has been illuminating to me. So takeaways for me are, uh, look to add value to people's lives, whatever you do, and it will pay off in the end. You not only will have the 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 just beautiful experience of of helping somebody else, but it will also come back to help you as well. Second thing, if you want to, I guess probably if you want to do anything, but especially if you want to do something in the online space, which I think I would recommend it to most people. Might not be for everyone, but I think that like there's so much potential there, and we can all kind of find a place to be. And if you want to do that, simplify. Find like the what's the simplest thing I can do right now to create some kind of content that is um, going to start getting me out there. So simplify it, find something that works for you, and then just move forward with the mindset that how can I add value through my content? How can I add value to the world? And the rest will kind of fall into place.
Yeah, and
So,
I think one last thing to add is be willing be willing to try thing like at the end of the day, especially in the digital marketing and digital online making money online space,
mm,
you're going to be shown a lot of different avenues that you can take.
mhm,
And my recommendation is pick one and go deep with it
mhm,
before drawing any conclusions about, okay, maybe I need to look at this other thing.
right.
Because if you don't give it enough time, like everything works, whether that
Okay.
be
Yeah.
e-commerce, whether that be creating content, whether that be starting a YouTube channel, whatever, it all works. It's just a
Hmm.
matter of what are you willing to focus on and put time and effort into.
Uh-huh.
And if some if something looks like it's not going to be adding value to your own life
Hmm.
in your own fulfillment in what you're doing, be willing to take a step back, reflect, and pivot when necessary.
Right.
I think those have been kind of like the biggest lessons that I've had over the years is just taking I think reflection in general is a very unsexy thing to do. And I think quite honestly, a lot of the revelations that I've had through my journey has been a function of taking a step back and saying, is this thing that I'm doing still serving me? As am I finding enjoyment in it? And
Yeah.
really, and let that be your guiding light,
Mhm.
rather than just focusing on what other people want you to focus on.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love it. Okay, so where can people find you? Where can they find more out about what you're doing, or if people want to hire you or your services, where can they go?
So honestly, it's been interesting because like I have built this business on the back of no website.
Mm, really?
Yeah, so I would say if you are looking to connect with me, I am actively on Instagram DM. You can find me at hitchcock.drew.
Okay.
And then if you look up, if you find my face on a YouTube channel with just my name,
Uh-huh.
that is probably me. I have been given a challenge to start making my own videos as of today.
Okay.
So I'm probably going to take that challenge on. I'm not quite sure where that channel is going to go personally. That's got a little bit of soul searching to do on that
Okay.
front. But if you just look up Drew Hitchcock on YouTube and find my face, you will. That is probably me.
Okay. And I'll get a link from you if you've got it, and then I'll
Yeah.
put it in the show notes and everything so people can find it if they want to, and we'll put all this information there. So, but what a great conversation. I am so appreciative of you, Drew,
No
for coming on and being willing to share your expertise and your experiences and your insights. They've been just really beneficial. So just awesome. Thank you so much for watching. It seriously means a lot. If you like that video and you want to see more like it, you can find them by clicking on the link right over there.